Hola a todos and welcome back to my channel. So today I have another different video for you. I don't usually do story time, but as it's Halloween this week and I have an incredible, horrible, terrifying Halloween story from Spain. It's actually from Spain, it's 100% true. I thought I would share it with you today. If you do enjoy this story, make sure to sub and give me a like and let me know in the comments if you've ever had an actually scary Halloween. So just a warning, this story does involve a lot of Spanish wine, a lot of guiris, some handsome Frenchmen, and a little city that you might know by the name of Seville. So it all really started a couple months into my Euro trip in Montpellier. So I was actually in France at the time. I got on a train and sat next to a very handsome Frenchman. This handsome Frenchman, it turns out, had just been studying in Ireland and was very keen to practice his English, so we pretty much chat the whole way there. Side note, when I got on the train, I did realize that a bird had shat in my hair, obviously just before I got on the train. So the whole train ride there, I was kind of you know, trying to keep it cool, but also not reveal the pile of bird shit in my hair. And being awkward as shit that I am, I didn't want to go to the bathroom and just deal with it because he was really handsome. That's all I can say. So-called handsome Frenchman, who I should probably give a pseudonym to, but let's just call him Frenchie, was going to do Erasmus in Seville. So he was like, oh, hit me up if you ever come to Spain. You're definitely welcome to come and stay with me, blah, 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 blah. We exchanged Facebook contact details, and on my way I went. I continued on with my Europe trip. My ex-boyfriend now, but boyfriend at the time, came over. We traveled together. Then we went down through Spain, and then he left to go home because I was on a 6-month trip. Not everyone wants to do 6 months away. I guess that's fair. The rest of the time was super normal. I had a normal trip through other parts of Europe and ended up in Madrid. And I still had 3 or 4 weeks left of my trip. And so I obviously contacted the French guy, Frenchie, and we organized to meet in Seville. So I got on a train and headed straight down to the beautiful city Seville. So I actually arrived on Halloween night, and he informed me that Spanish people actually do kind of celebrate Halloween and that they were going to a big Erasmus Halloween party, and so obviously I was going to go with them. We went shopping for Halloween costumes, and then we went back to his giant, this place was amazing. I thought it was so incredible. It was this giant house and it had about 8 or 10 bedrooms in it, a whole heap of Erasmus students from all over Europe and actually South America. So there were a couple of Chileans living there as well. So we were in this giant house, and it had a terrace balcony up the top, and it was hollow in the middle because it was one of those old Moorish buildings. Little Elyce didn't realize at the time that this was quite a common architectural style in Seville. This will be important information to keep in the back of your mind for later in the story. So anyway, I got myself a witch costume. We went back and we started to have some pre-drinks as young Erasmus students do. Everything was going great. And then we went out. So I'm pretty sure from my more recently acquired knowledge of the city that we went out in Alameda. So we met up with a massive, massive, massive group of Erasmus students. So meanwhile, in the course of the evening, everyone had kind of switched into speaking Spanish because most of the Erasmus students were obviously there to learn Spanish. Other people obviously spoke Spanish, and then there were obviously Spanish students. I, however, didn't speak any more than 5 words. So I was really just kind of hovering around. Meanwhile, the Chilean girl who was studying there's brother who was visiting started hitting on me in Spanish because he didn't speak any English. And obviously the Chilean guy was super cute, but we couldn't communicate at all. And he was kind of chasing me around the party, hitting on me, because honestly, Spanish guys are not like this, but South American guys are a lot more persistent. So You have to give them a lot of no's before they get that it's a no. But I was kind of like darting and like hiding from him for most of the party. Yeah, I just got like totally like swept up in the thing. And probably the Chilean guy was with the French guy at different times. So then I was like, I don't want to go back with Frenchie because then I'm gonna have to deal with this, blah, 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 blah. And so I ended up drifting into this like group of Irish people because obviously they spoke English. So it was kind of like safe ground. Anyway, the night went on, it was crazy, it was fun. I had actually a really, really, really great night. But at the end of the night, for some reason, I could not find Frenchie. Like, had absolutely no idea where Frenchie was. I was still with the Irish group, so I was still with people, but I did not know where Frenchie was. Anyway, we had like a few message interactions and we both obviously had drunk way too much. I don't know what we were drinking, but I'm assuming it was like some kind of concoction of Spanish wine and juice or something. Yeah, we both obviously had too much of that. I was having a great time, he was having a great time, and somehow we left, we departed from each other. I thought I would be totally fine and ended up like just staying with the Irish people who invited me to stay at their place. So I was more or less spent my whole night running away from this Chilean guy who kept trying to make out with me, and henceforth ended up at this Irish house. So I woke up at like the crack of dawn. I don't know what time it actually was. It's all a blur now. But I remember waking up and thinking, oh my God, I have to get back to Frenchie's house. All my stuff is there, like my passport, both of my passports, like probably my wallet really, if I think about it. And just pretty much just like my entire life for 6 months was in a bag in this French guy who I didn't really know's apartment. So I was, apartment, giant house, you get the gist. So I was like, okay, I have to get back there. I totally trusted the French guy. I wasn't worried about it at all, but I felt like a real hangover need to like get up immediately and leave the building and find my way back. So I left the apartment. I didn't tell anyone that I was leaving because everyone was still asleep and I'd been sleeping on the couch. I left their apartment and obviously got locked out when I left their apartment. But then I got to the bit that goes outside and I couldn't work out how to get out of the actual building. Like the door was locked, and now that I think about it, it probably had like a buzzer on one of the sides, but I'm Australian and I'm not used to like apartment living, so I don't think I'd like even thought about it. Anyway, eventually someone came to the door and let me out. So I got out of the apartment building. That was like a first step for me. Please remember that I had been out since like 9 p.m. the night before. I go out onto the street and I think, how far could we have possibly have gone? Like we walked everywhere, so we can't have gone that far at all. I'll see something that I recognize because everything I'd seen in Seville to that point had been quite new to me. Like I hadn't seen buildings like that before and everything seemed quite iconic and different. So I was just assuming that I would see like, I don't know, the mushroom or something. I was like walking around the city and then was like, okay, look, I'm just gonna go into a cafe and log into someone's Wi-Fi because this was back in the day where you didn't really like have the option of having a cheap internet package on your phone while you were traveling. It just didn't really exist. So I sat in a cafe, I obviously still didn't speak Spanish, and I was like trying to like gesture to this guy like, can I get the Wi-Fi password, blah, 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 blah. While I was at the cafe, I was smart enough to put some credit on my phone because I didn't really have any left because I'd been messaging Frenchie all night, so that I could again message him, ask him his address and try to call him or find out like some information. Didn't get through to him, but you know, the idea was there. My brain was like, you just need to go back to the train station. If you get back to the Seville train station, you will be able to get back to where Frenchie lives because you walked from the train station with Frenchie to his building and that'll be fine. So I decided that I would find the train station and then from the train station, I would be able to get my way back. So I got on a bus, a random bus, and was like asking people if I went to the train station, and I guess someone told me that it did, or vaguely got there or something. It was a loop. I don't know. I've never caught buses in Seville since. I don't know whether I'm scarred, but it's not really a city where the buses are particularly convenient, I don't think. Anyway, got to the train station. I think I was more or less at the train station from my memory. And then started walking, and at this point I was like, sure, I'm gonna find his place so easily because he's got this rooftop patio. Like, it's such a distinctive building. Of course I'm going to find it. I'm definitely going to find it. Oh my God. So I'm walking around like the city trying to find this distinctive house that has the rooftop patio and is like this square shape and has, you know, there's so many of them in Seville. All the houses in the center kind of look the same, especially if you're foreign. Like, I'm sure if you're from Seville, and now that I've lived there, I definitely realized that's not the case, but at the time it definitely felt like everything looked the same, and I was like, I am never going to find this place. Eventually I found myself in a square, the same square where I had bought my witch outfit, which I knew was only about 2 minutes walk from where he lived. So I was kind of like, you know, tracking my way back. So I'm walking off the streets because thinking it was only 2 minutes away, like he must live on one of the streets around this square because this is where we bought our costumes, and it's like was a really short walk from his house. So walking up and down, by this stage I just broke out into tears. I was like the biggest guiri. I was like hung over blonde girl sitting in the middle of the square wearing her like makeup and clothes from the night before. Can you imagine? My mum will be horrified if she watches this. Crying my eyes out. This cute little Spanish couple came up to me and tried to help me, but they didn't speak any English, and as I've already mentioned, I didn't speak any Spanish. So needless to say, the communication wasn't really that useful and we didn't resolve anything. In my head, like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I don't speak the language here. I do not have my passport. I'm gonna be stuck in Spain forever. I'm not gonna be able to contact anyone. And when this old couple came up and helped me, I was a bit like, well, you know, maybe I'll just learn Spanish and eventually I'll be fine. I saw a pharmacy that we'd weirdly gone into the day before because Frenchie needed some Panadol, and I, at that stage, needed some Panadol, so I went in to get some Panadol. And I went into the pharmacy and the pharmacist was like, are you okay? In English, to which I was like, no. So she spoke enough English that I could tell her a vague, shorter version of this story, to which point she was like, come and sit next to me and I will help you. And this is like so accurate for how I feel like in Under the Thea is like, maybe sometimes people seem a bit rude in certain situations, but don't you just know that if you're upset and crying somewhere, or you go in somewhere, the girls are gonna be like, come and sit with me, and they're gonna comfort you and they're gonna try and help you, even if they don't really speak your language. So I sat next to her and she let me use her internet at work so that I could try to log into Facebook to see if they had a Facebook page. Because I vaguely remember Frenchie mentioning that they had a Facebook page like Casa Loca or something like that, because it was so crazy that and wild that they had so many people living in this like Seville house thing. So I was like, okay, next plan, go into Facebook and try to find this Facebook page. Maybe it'll have the address from a previous party or something like that. So I tried to get into my Facebook account. Obviously, because I was using a different computer in a different country, Facebook were like, hell no, girl, you are not going into your Facebook account. Oh my God! After like messaging passwords between my phone and emails and trying all sorts of things, I finally got into my Facebook account. But don't you just know that when you need to remember your secret question and you set up a secret question that wasn't real because you didn't want someone to get into your account, yeah, that's gonna come back and bite you in the ass. Finally, I got in and I found a Facebook page. So still haven't heard anything back from Frenchie, but I found the Facebook page. So I got the address and she printed me off Google Map directions. And I was all like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, you are the best person ever. Walked out of the pharmacy and realized that the directions were all in Spanish. And awkward me didn't just walk back in and say, hey, do you mind putting them in English and printing them out for me again? I was like, oh my gosh, she's gone to so much trouble. I can't possibly go in and ask her, can you put these in English? So instead I find the taxi driver and say, can you please drive me to this address? To which he's like, no, crazy lady, because that house is like around the block, like literally just over there. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I have been outside now. Like I've been out of the place that I'm supposed to be staying in for, let's work out how many hours that would have been. So we would have left at about 9, and this would have been about 3 p.m. the next day. So I was like, no, you are driving me to this place. And so obviously he drove me to the place. He drove me past twice because I still couldn't see it.
Oh my God!
I would have walked past it so many times, but the door was quite distinctive but hidden, and I didn't remember it being hidden at all. So eventually I did find it. The taxi driver pretty much was like, oh my gosh, you are the biggest guiri ever, and I'm gonna walk you to the front door. And then I knocked on the front door. By this stage, I was furious at Frenchie because I was like, what the hell? I've been messaging you literally for like probably at least 12 hours. You still haven't responded to anything. I was royally pissed off. And every time I tried to call him, his phone had been like, whatever, like this phone is out of charge or not on or something, whatever. It was probably in Spanish, I did not understand. So I was like knocking on the door, and one of the Dutch guys who lived in the house left me and was like, wow, someone had a good night. I was like, did not have a good night. This is the worst night of my life, literally. I thought I was going to be like stranded and homeless in Spain forever. So then went up to Frenchie's room, which was like on like the 3rd or the 4th floor of the building, and started knocking on his door, to which he calls out, puta madre. And I was like, what? Anyway, he eventually let me in and was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought it was the cleaner. I mean, still, maybe don't speak to your cleaner like that. And I walked in and he was like, why didn't you message me? And I was like, are you kidding me? So apparently he tried to message me a couple of times, put his phone on the charger in case I messaged or called, and then obviously gone to sleep because he was super hungover as well, but he sensibly went home and got to sleep until 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So I was like, I can't even believe you said that. So I was like telling him how I'd been messaging him all morning and everything that had happened, and being French was like, oh, yeah, that's a funny story. And I was just like, not funny. And then all of a sudden his phone goes zzz, 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 zzz. Literally all my messages and missed calls from the night, morning and afternoon in Anglo time came through at like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was seriously ridiculous. And yes, children, that's why when you travel, you always take the address on paper, in your wallet or something like that, with you everywhere you go, no matter where you're staying, even if you're staying with a friend or a strange, handsome Frenchman that you met on the train. All I can say is that I'm very happy that I did not wear the witch's outfit, because I think that would have just like put the guiri mode, that would have been too much. I don't think the locals would have been able to deal with it. I thought I would just share that ridiculous story with everyone here. So that is my like official most guiri story moment of my life. Obviously didn't ruin the city because a few years later I moved there, which is kind of funny when you think about it. You think if you had this thing happen to you, you'd be like, I'm never going there again. If you did enjoy this, please let me know in the comments below. I am trying to upload a lot more often and do a bit more variety of content. The other moral of the story is don't be an awkward turtle. And if you get bird shit in your hair, you should definitely do something about that, even if a hot ass guy is sitting next to you in the train. Hasta luego.